And I'd like to now ask all of you to help me welcome our distinguished guests and their excellencies from Rwanda, Mozambique, and Kenya. Your Excellency, the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, please join me on stage, sir. Please, in the middle. In the middle, yes. President of Kenya, William Ruto, nice to see you again, sir. And of course, the President of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi. Welcome, sir. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much to all of you. Take a seat. We're going to be asking some tough questions. I hope you are ready and finding some solutions. You know, over the last couple of days, I've been listening intently on the conversations that we've been having. And one of the key themes that have really been coming through, leadership, governance, and I think those have been reiterated by Alaji as well as by Mr. Poyane. Leadership, governance, and trying to actually figure out a way to finally create policy continuity. We're talking about being at the global table as opposed to the menu, but I think it's time that we have a little bit of introspection and ask ourselves where we stand on our table. Where do we rate ourselves? How do we rate our leadership in Africa? How do we rate our own leadership in our respective countries? President Kagame, I'd like to start off with you, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to join my brothers, colleagues on the stage and thank the CEO forum organizers and for inviting us to be here, and also to thank them for many of the topical issues that they have enabled us to discuss. So straight to the point and the question you've raised. We don't need to keep rating each other or others and so on and so forth, but we just have to focus and deal with the problems at hand. Every one of us, whether on the stage, the heads of state, or in the audience, the other leaders and business leaders and others from outside, know there are problems that we have to tackle on our African continent. There are many problems across the world. Every continent, every country have their own problems to deal with, but we are talking about Africa now. First, Africa is not a monolith. We have many countries, we have regions, we have relations among ourselves, different countries and regions and the whole continent relate with other parts of the world in many different ways and benefit each other. But specifically for Africa, there is a history that we can learn from. A history that has deprived Africa of so many things, exploited resources of our continent, and the resources benefits went outside rather than benefiting the people of our continent. That's fine. In my view, this should be something we can and should have learned from. What we can do among ourselves, with others, and that can benefit all of us. As they normally and frequently talk about win-win situation. There are things, relationships, working together wins. So then with all this, we need to therefore avoid having suffered in our history in the past and different tragedies and we need to leave behind us, far behind us, the sense of victimhood. We can't be trapped in that we are victims of the past and so on and so forth. So we just need to seize the moment, because we really have everything that should do us proud, whether it is the resources, natural resources, or human capital, or all kinds of things. So, having said all that, we see problems everywhere, also in different parts of our continent. And there is poverty that shouldn't be here after so many decades, after this tragic history I was talking about in different parts. And if we look at ourselves in comparison with other parts of the world, there are certain African countries or regions that were better off than other countries on other continents, let's say 50 years ago. And now what has happened on our continent, there has been either stagnation or reversal of the gains we should have been making or had made. And these countries that were so much behind us are hundreds of times better than us. So there is a question you must answer, certainly.
That comes down to leadership, though, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
It does. I was just telling this story so that I talk about leadership in conclusion. I was giving a background. So what is lacking, therefore? What is it? Indeed, there is that leadership. There is that unity around the purpose. There is, taking the opportunity that is before us and translating it into the aspirations, the needs of what people are capable of in the first place. So this requires leadership, it requires governance, it requires accountability, it requires assessing and challenging ourselves and holding us, ourselves accountable in case you expected something out of your effort and it is not there. We should be able to say why. So leadership is about, therefore, the management of all these processes and getting the outcome you want, you had intended to get, or you had designed to get. So leadership is not just something in abstract. In the end, and it's not just a theory, in the end it must give you something that is tangible, that you can see, that you can touch, that you can feel, and even put in numbers. So on our continent, we still have a lot of work to do. And it doesn't serve us well that we blame each other or we point fingers. But no, the fact is, for us being able to simply seize the moment and to do what we ought to do to deliver for our people and therefore the whole continent.
Brilliant, Mr. President. Seizing the moment is part of that. It sort of reminds me of the story that Alaji was saying about, the change of goalposts. They suddenly change the goalposts and you're trying to strike and things have changed again. And as to what President Kagame was talking about having that strong voice, the leadership that we need, is it about having a unified African voice? We're a big continent, very diverse. Do we need that unified voice? President Kagame was leading reforms at the AU. You've now taken on that role. Is it the AU? Is it another institution? Is it individual countries? Is it regional bodies?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. I got a letter from my brother, President Kagame, and I'm very happy to be here. I think it's a combination. I think leadership starts from where you are, starts from your family all the way. So let me say this, and I quite agree with what President Kagame has said. It boils down to leadership. China, 30, 35 years ago, was not where it is today. In 35 years, today China is the second largest economy in the world. It's because of leadership, it's because of decision making. And leadership is about decision making. Leading is about making the right decisions. And always I am challenged because when I make right decisions, people always tell me, you know, you have to think about your re-election.
And do you?
You know,
Does that,
and
do you take that into consideration?
I keep reminding them that I was not elected to be re-elected. I was elected to transform the country.
Hey, let me ask you this.
You know, I remember when I speak in some fora,
Yeah.
and people come and whisper to me, oh, you know, don't say too much because you see, you know, these people might get annoyed with you, and you know, I'm asking myself, it's not in my place to say what people want to hear or what is popular.
Yeah.
It is my position to say what is right. And you know, what is right is not necessarily popular.
Yes.
And it is the conversation,
And that's very
it is the conversation we're having in Kenya, you know. Let me give you two examples.
Yeah.
When I came into office, I told the people of Kenya, our savings as a percentage of GDP is around 10, 11%. Other countries are in the region of 40, 50. China is at 55% percentage of saving. We were saving 200 shillings every month, every Kenyan, in our National Social Security Fund. I said we must change this. We changed it. Now every Kenyan pays 6% of their salary. Their employer pays 6% of their of an equivalent into our savings. And I promise you, what is happening now is that our Social Security Fund, which is about 320 billion Kenya shillings now, we are going to double it, and we have saved that 320 in 60 years. But we are going to double it in 4 years because of the decision we have made.
You've had to take tough decisions.
Let me tell you one more thing.
Okay.
We agreed with the people of Kenya that housing is a problem. We have 7 million Kenyans living in slums. We have 1,410 slums in Kenya. People living in squalor, without water, without electricity, without anything. And I said, we must have a paradigm shift. Everybody agrees that we need to invest in housing. In fact, let me tell you this. Both the manifesto of the party I lead and the manifesto of my challenger, both of them had housing. But when it came to implementation, the uproar was unbelievable. But I said, people, we had this in our manifestos, we're going to implement. Let me tell you the good news. We have now 120,000 housing units under construction in Kenya. It is my intention to get 1 million Kenyans homeowners in the next 5 years. That is a function of decision making. That's a function of leadership. And finally, my brother Paul Kagame has done a wonderful job on the reform of the AU. He handed over his notes to me. I intend not to let down my brother. This AU, we are going to reform it. And we are going to make AU a fit-for-purpose organization so that we can sort out the things Ali Dangote is talking about, so that we can have clarity in where we want to go. We can get the Africa Continental Free Trade Area moving and being a reality so that our business people can trade across this continent so that we can move across this continent. President Kagame has removed visa for people coming to Kenya, for people coming to Rwanda. I have done the same. And I like what I heard from my good brother from Kenya. He said in Nigeria, they pay $230 US. You pay ATA only $30 and you pay it online. You don't have to go to no office. So this is the situation we are faced with, and I want to say that we are going to change our continent ourselves, not others.
Brilliant. Okay, I have follow-ups on the tax regime, but I want to also ask President Nyusi a few questions, but it's coming. I need to ask about the popularity of these tax reforms and whether you can still create a hustler economy. President Nyusi, great to have you with us. Welcome. Listening to the question on leadership, and I want you to tell me about what your thoughts are. We spoke about that united African voice. You domestically, and we heard from Mr. Puyana as well, in terms of what you're dealing with in the northern parts of Mozambique. You've got security issues. That was one of the big concerns. Leadership is important. In Mozambique. We actually did a fantastic story about the port of Mozambique, where you're seeing incredible growth coming through. It's almost like a tale of two worlds in your country. Could you tell us, what are your priorities right now? What are you concerned about? Security?
Ellen, thank you very much. But to make sure that this is African CEO Forum, I will do it in Portuguese.
I understand, I'm ready. Thank you, sir.
Bom, primeiro quero agradecer o meu irmão e amigo, presidente Kagame, que fez esse convite para nós estarmos aqui. Mas dizer de facto que o debate presidencial é mais difícil do que o anterior. O anterior que era mais sobre...
We have an issue, and I think mine is also broken. Could someone assist, please?
We are good. We can proceed.
Apologies for the delay. We're having technological hiccup.
Thank you. Estava eu a dizer que o debate presidencial é mais difícil por ser político.
Yes, I was talking about different aspects, such as economical aspects that are more concrete. There's been colleagues who have spoken about leadership, the necessity to have leadership. And I was kind enough to listen to the voices of my brothers. And we also asked so many questions. But I think it's very important for us to bear that philosophy, a philosophy that says that we don't want to see the African continent always on the negative side. We need to see the African continent in a good image in terms of dynamism. That is a continent that is open. We know that the continent has gone through so much in terms of colonialism. So this is what we need to take into account in order to move forward. And we understand that what we are doing is good for us. Now, concerning the question related to security in my country, there's been quite a number of efforts together with my brother, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and we discussed on issues related to security. These are crucial points. Security is very important. We need also to have food security. We need to have access to energy, education, and food. So we've put in place so many aspects in terms of security. In Mozambique, in the northern part of the country, where we have looking at exploring mining resources such as hydrocarbons, etc. It is true we've gone through terrorism threats, terrorism occurrences in 2021. For example, we encountered so many challenges, and we put in place micro projects in those areas we were supposed to start. And then in terms of national security, thanks to the support of my brother from Rwanda, it was an opportunity for me to thank the people of Rwanda for showing solidarity. And I believe that pretty soon we'll be able to foster our cooperation. So today we found ourselves in a situation where we are fighting terrorism, not only us as Mozambique, but as a country, that is all African countries. We've been able to contain the threat situation, and it was way better than what we went through in 2021. And I'm very happy because in Africa, terrorism still remains a threat. And thanks to the work that we are doing, we've been able to put an end. So I believe that the good weapon today is dialogue. We need to foster dialogue. And thanks to dialogue, I personally had the opportunity to go to the forest to dialogue with the enemies because I knew what was happening and I knew what they wanted. So we were able to discuss and then we agreed on some points. So the situation is quite better now.
And force majeure at the moment. To what extent is this having an impact on the perceptions of risk towards Mozambique? I think that's really important because you want to learn the private sector, but you're dealing with this security issue.
Bom, primeiro, esta é uma oportunidade que
Yes, indeed. What we want is to, concerning Mozambique, on Wednesday there was a forum which was held together with the private sector, not only from Mozambicans, but also partners who came in to visit the country. The current situation is stable. It's just a minor part of the north which is still under threat, but investment have never been stopped. So it means that the level of risk in Mozambique is non-existent. Now, in terms of investment in Mozambique, in sectors such as power, infrastructure, energy, and we are building ports. We have 3 ports so far that can have major shipping lines to do the work. And there are so many people who have visited Mozambique, they can witness. So we made a call, a virtual call, and then we were able to discuss. There's been so many investments. Now, concerning risks, there's a specific chapter that we need to talk about, which we spoke about yesterday, that is energy. And so many times we tend to neglect problems, basic problems. But these are problems that can pose a lot of challenges to us. It is important for us to consider our children who don't have access to food, to education. In Mozambique, we have a program which is called a presidential initiative. It is called Education for All. So this is what really helped us to reach 52% in terms of progress. We don't use fossil fuel, we rather use solar energy. So risks are a fact. If we are not able to solve those problems, we will definitely face risks. So we are ready to move forward into production as well. Thank you.
Security, obviously top of mind, I guess, for so many African leaders looking very closely at what's happening at borders. But I want to talk about perception of risk towards Africa and whether it's warranted. You know, these are stories that we cover a lot. And we talk about, you know, the very high cost of capital towards the continent. Some of the excuses are because of security issues. Some of the excuses, I mean, really, they're far and wide, unbankable projects and so forth. You've been able to really create some great partnerships of late. And I'm wondering what the international sphere is asking when they come here before they sign. And how do you ensure that you don't sign bad deals, because we sign bad deals.
Right. The risk profile for Africa is deliberately exaggerated to benefit those who anyway dictate the way things go.
Want favorable deals for themselves, basically.
Absolutely. So we have to be clear about that. And this fits into some of the topics that were discussed here when we were talking about whether Africa is at the table or is on the menu. And I think many times it is both. Because even when some people are at the table, they think they have raised their level, but actually they don't realize that at some point, whenever somebody decides that they be eaten up on the menu, that will happen. So, but we should be very conscious of that, and therefore not deceive ourselves, but operate as people with that, coming from that background or the context of what dictates things in the world. So in our case, we have had great partnerships. And from the beginning, partnerships for development, partnerships in economic activities, in partnership for development from the outset. That was like been 15, 20 years ago. We got our partners used to the fact that this is our country, these are our problems, we must address them. We appreciate partners, we appreciate support, we appreciate everything, but we don't appreciate anybody trying to replace us in our own affairs and do either to do things for us or to dictate to us what we must be doing, because we kept saying we are the masters of our own destiny.
What's the ratio of the guys coming in and wanting to dictate versus the guys coming in wanting to actually do something good?
Well, those who want to do something, we sit and discuss.
Yeah.
There's what we want, there's what they want. So we talk about how each one of us benefits from what is under transaction. So this is, it's fair for them, it's fair to us. So we make sure that that is what happens. Let me tell you a couple of things. We've done different deals in sports, in different areas. For example, I'll tell you, we have a partnership with the PSG, with Bayern Munich, with Arsenal, with and you know, when we did that, we made sure that they benefit and we benefit. But you could have seen, maybe you did, what was written in the papers, saying Rwanda, how does Rwanda go for this, or they are spending money on this, they are doing that, and we had to keep explaining. So we are spending money, but we are receiving money too. So it is not just spending. The money we spend is, even when you spend, sometimes I go watch football, even in the stadiums, here or there in those countries where we have partnerships. I spend my money to buy the ticket. In fact, one of the people who dictate accused me one time when I was in London attending Arsenal game at the Emirates, said, you see, this man comes here and we give the money for support and he spends it in the stadium watching football. So I told these people, I say, you know what? I earn a salary for the work I do. So I spend my salary to go and watch football. So I didn't spend So I told them I didn't spend their money. I spent my money, personal money from my earnings as, salary for what I do. So, but it may sound simplistic, but the moral of it is that there's always somebody somewhere wanting to dictate to you how you live your life, how you conduct every business you do for yourself or for your country, even for the country to be dictated to which direction it must take. And we have refused that. And therefore, again, talking about leadership, I'm sure there are many others who do even better things than that somewhere else in other countries. But it still comes to leaders in any level of society being able to identify the purpose of what they want, how they must achieve it, and how, therefore, even for self-respect, we cannot have a relationship that is lacking respect. I will always respect you, but you must return respect.
It's the criticism and the hypocrisy that really is painful. You know, the criticism and the hypocrisy that we see from the West in particular, that is particularly painful to hear a lot of the time, you know. President Ruto, I want to ask you this, and you're going to the United States to meet with President Biden, the first official African state visit since 2015. The US Commerce Secretary says the US is the best partner for Africa, but there is a jostle for Africa. The US, Europe, China, Russia. Who is the best partner? What's the vibe?
The best partner is Rwanda.
No. Ruto is Africa. It's not Rwanda or it's Africa.
Okay, even better.
I don't think I have to answer that question. It's been answered. Both by President
Outside
Kagame.
African borders, who's the best partner?
So, in the context of what we have said here, the best partner for us is the one that accepts to have a deal that is a win-win. We must continuously, in whatever engagement, we must keep our interests at the center of our focus.
But that hasn't been the case. We win-lose. We sign up assets and commodities as collateral a lot of the time.
And
when is that going to change?
If we sign a bad deal, we must not finger point. It is up to us to make sure that we don't sign bad deals for our people. You know, and I agree with President Kagame, this mentality of victimhood, that you make a mistake and then you want to blame somebody else. It's not right. I mean, we must say no if the answer is no. And we must be firm to say this cannot continue. In fact, that is the conversation we are currently having. We are telling our friends, our development partners, the architecture that exists, the financial architecture that exists is faulty. It is unfair. It is not right. It must be changed. When we started that conversation, it looked weird. Today, they have come to the table accepting what they did not believe in the past. Today, they agree with us that the current international financial architecture is faulty, it is unfair, it must be fixed. It is one of the conversations I'll be having with President Biden, because the US has a lot of say on the current international financial architecture.
You're not going to like this question. What if President Trump becomes president again? He eroded the relationship with Africa.
We will have a conversation with President Trump.
Okay.
When he comes into office. If he comes into office, we are talking to the President of the United States, whoever that is.
Because it's policy consideration.
And we are saying, we are not making a policy for a moment. We want to have a conversation as a continent. And for your information, if you have followed my language, yes, it's about Kenya. But it's in the context of us being Africans, and it's a context of Africa. We will be having conversation about the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, the AGOA, that gives us duty-free, quota-free access to the American market with our goods. That is one of the conversations I'm going to have with the Congress for the extension of AGOA, so that we can leverage on that agreement to be able to create jobs in our continent, add value to our products, and have access to the American market. Among the conversations we're going to have is about peace, security, and stability. We have seen the US, we have seen Europe spend billions in Gaza, billions in Ukraine. Have you seen billions in Africa?
No, I haven't.
So this is the conversation we want to have. I mean, we have issues in Eastern DRC. We have issues in Somalia. We have issues in Sudan. We believe that a proper partnership should be structured between Africa through the AU, with the US, with the EU, on how stability matters wherever that is.
And it matters
whether
for them
it
as
is in
well.
Africa, or it is in Gaza, or it is in Ukraine, it is about people. And there are no better people than others. We're all human beings. You know? It is, for example, the reason why Kenya is going to participate in securing Haiti, because we are a responsible global citizen. Kenya has participated in peacekeeping for the last 40 years. We have been in 49 countries, just like Rwanda have. And therefore, when called upon to support humanity, we must show up. And so does others need to show up where we are concerned.
And they have not shown up for a long time. President Kagame.
Thank you for giving me a minute to add to what President is saying, which I entirely agree with. And it's good that we have such a voices maybe being invited to the table. So they maybe represent us there very well. That's exactly what I mean. I wanted to clarify the level of hypocrisy and all kinds of stuff we have to deal with. The president mentioned the AGOA. You know, Rwanda was beneficiary of AGOA. Not any longer. We were struck off the list of the beneficiaries. You know the reasons? Simply because we wanted to promote, develop textiles industries here to make our own garments. And by doing that and encouraging the industries to develop, we said we do not want to have second-hand clothes being dumped here in thousands of tons. Just for saying that, and later on trying to implement that, you know, they forced it upon us. They say, you must accept these second-hand clothes. And we told them no. So they say, okay, we will strike you off AGOA, which they did. We've never been returned on the list, but we never accepted second-hand clothes.
And let me tell you, if anyone's been to these second-hand markets, you'll understand why Africa has become a dumping ground for second-hand clothing, for, I don't even want to call them second-hand cars because they're not even worth being second-hand, and that affects us so badly. President Nyusi, I want you to jump in here. You know, there's so much to discuss. Who do you think the best partner is? What is Mozambique doing?
Who's the best?
The best partner to team up with. The guys that want to sign good deals. What has come across your table? And how you make sure you're not on the menu? Because you have a lot of delicious resources and raw materials to offer the world.
Tá bom. Bom, primeiro, nós estamos agora na base de win-win.
First of all, we're in a win-win partnership. environment. We're trying to develop our country, to develop our resources in Mozambique. And all our friends, as they know, we still have a democracy. That policy is to make more friends in the same direction. For that, we have to be on the same ground of understanding. That is well defined. According to agreement, we are celebrate what we are looking for, the advantage of our people, and in that way, clearly, on the basis of win-win agreements we are trying to put in place, if we can be able to transform, to process our resources internally, we can avoid that issue to have less employment, and we can create more value, add more value in our own resources, and that will enable us that the value chain be more accessible, especially for agro-businesses and etc. etc. I think our partners are those ones who are winning with me, and at the same time I can also obtain some low-hanging fruits. Politically, economically, I think that is a very different issues, but I can give you one example. We've already started in the period of war between Ukraine, I think in Russia, we stayed with Ukraine in terms of friendship. Our interests remain the same, and we need to have this continent in the same pace. We don't need to have distraction of our sectors. We need to maintain the pace to continue within that clear spirit of collaboration. Even Mozambique partners are those ones who can come and satisfy interests of Mozambique. Thank you.
The US?
Esta pergunta é tendenciosa e manipuladora. Sim. A pergunta encontra claramente a resposta.
I think the question has already an answer. Our friends are all of those who can come and provide satisfactions to our country interest.
I want, President Ruto, I have to ask you this question, the tax reform. You had to come in with very unpopular tax increases, and it really spoke to what you said, that, you know, as a president, you have to do things without really taking into consideration whether it's going to be popular or not. How do you get everyone on board with what you've done? And are you still going to deliver your promise on a hustler economy?
100%. I have my eyes on the ball. I made a commitment to the people of Kenya. I intend to keep every promise that I made. Number one, I told them that I will get 7 million Kenyans who had been blacklisted under the Credit Reference Bureau. 7 million Kenyans are out. They used to pay 1% per day. Today they pay 8% per year. That's the difference. When I came in, I said we are going to get rid of subsidizing consumption. We are going to support production. The price of maize meal was 240 when I came into office. Today it is 100.
Brilliant.
Yep.
I'll be watching.
It was a big story, the cost of living. When I came into office, I promised the people of Kenya that we are going to increase our savings as a percentage of our GDP. Today, we have a plan in place. I said we're going to have 1 million homeowners. We are on course. I said we are going to have universal health coverage. We are on course. We have already passed 4 laws. We are on course. The people who had issues with what I was doing a year ago, today, they are thinking differently because they've come to appreciate that I know what I'm doing and the country is going to change.
Thank you, sir. We're watching closely. We have friends in Kenya, and I'm going to get baptized soon as Helen Kyoko, by the way.
Thank you.
Come here soon. President Kagame, when we talk about Africa being on the table globally, what tables do we want to be on? What voice do we want? Do we want to have a geopolitical perspective on what's happening, Russia and Ukraine? Do we want to have a voice about what's happening in Gaza? What kind of voice do we want on the global table?
Yeah, we want a voice to be able to decide matters that affect us for ourselves, for each country, for the continent as a whole, because so many things. You talked about the risk profile and how that translates into high cost of many things for us, and therefore stifles business, investments, and so on and so forth. So the voice we are looking for, first of all, it must be really a united voice. On our continent, we must work very hard to make sure that you can't have 1.4 billion people with no voice or scattered voices and nothing coming out of that. So we need to come together, but it is a voice about what happens to these 1.4 billion people and things that they have a say in, and they can determine for themselves where they're coming from, what they need to do, where they are going, without really being dictated to. Because even what you've just said, the geopolitics and the competition and adversarial relationships these big powers may have, sometimes coming to Africa, whether it is to one country or two or the whole continent, and telling them, like the famous thing, is you are either with us or you are against us. That's right. So, and telling people to line up and support what has been determined. It's not correct, and Africa should just refuse it. So what we are talking about is being able to decide. And we don't exclude working with others. We benefit from others. We benefit from the same people who dictate things to us. There's no question about it. We want that relationship that benefits us and also that benefits them. And it must translate in many things here. You see, these African countries are very, very rich countries in terms of resources. I think it was said earlier by Rico and others and Patrick when they were here, we can't keep producing things and sending rocks containing minerals and doing things, and then some people elsewhere out of the continent refine that and process that and return these things so many times costly. Why? Why can't we do, if not the whole of it, part of it? And this doesn't exclude anyone. The same people who take our raw materials can still be part of that processing and adding value to that. So what is the issue? So this is what we are talking about. The voice we are going to have is to translate what Africa owns to its own benefit.
Yes. I'm going to try and get through as many things as possible, and we've got a lot to go through, but what do we actually need? And the industrialization part, the building value chains is important, but it got me thinking. After I spent about a week with Alaji in Nigeria, going to the refinery, going to the cement plant, and you know what I felt when I was there, apart from being absolutely proud? I realized we need brave capital. We need brave investments. We need people that are willing to put their money on the table to make it happen, and we need Africans to do it for themselves, because if that doesn't happen and we wait, it won't happen, because the world actually doesn't really want to take value chains away from their markets and make it work on the African continent. President Nyusi, I want you to jump in here on the continental free trade area, whether you're seeing an impact, whether you're optimistic about truly industrializing the continent, taking our value chains back and making it work.
Bom, o que dizia claramente o meu irmão aqui, Ruto.
What I was saying, what I was telling to my friend Ruto, is that one of the reforms at the African Union level is that we should try to make things move seamlessly across the continent. We know that we do not have a long mandate in Africa, but I think that it's possible to implement that reform, and that reform must be based on mutual trust amongst our countries. And in fact, we have also to have a look on what others are doing. Now, coming to African countries, we have to work for our mutual interest as African countries. And, you know, sometimes in Europe there is a kind of a protectionism. That means that they produce and they protect their product. And we know also that in Africa we still have some challenges, including infrastructure issues, but issues around the connectivity. So we have to promote connectivity. We have to build infrastructures, including railways and road infrastructures. And we must build that capacity and that possibility to promote free movement of goods and people in Africa, just like I was telling to my brother, President Kagame, that we have to work to make sure that products who are produced in Mozambique can move freely across the continent, reach Rwanda, for example, so that we can really make easy that free movement of people and goods. And what I mean in a nutshell, that it is possible to have African integration, to have an integrated Africa. And now coming to SADC, in fact, we are working on also on trying to remove trade barriers, including visas. So now we have opened our borders among 8 countries in Southern Africa, and the same can be also done elsewhere in Africa. Now, after having done this, we have observed that tourism has increased significantly in the region, and it is only by so doing that we can also achieve our goals. And we have also to fight against terrorism and to improve our security settings, because all these policies, in fact, should be helpful for Africa. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Anyway.
And I was just thinking, as President Nyusi was speaking, making sure that our borders, we're friends with our neighbors and things are okay at our borders. And actually, we can all say that's not really the case for everyone sitting here. So what does that mean in terms of true integration? And then it kind of brings me back to what we're seeing in the Sahel and West Africa and in Central Africa with coups that have risen, ECOWAS, the issues there. I mean, there's so much. To create that cohesion, we have to look inwards to fix these issues. So President Ruto, what are you doing?
It is part of the brief that was handed to me by President Kagame. How do we consolidate and integrate our market? You heard Aliko Dangote say that our intra-Africa trade is at 15–16%. We are struggling to get market elsewhere when we are not trading enough with ourselves. Intra-European trade is at 70%. Intra-Asian trade is at 60%. Intra-African trade is at 16%.
May I be blunt? May I be blunt and say, do we like each other enough to want to trade amongst each other when we don't even have the rules to make that happen?
Precisely the point why we must fix our AU so that it has what President Kagame said, a loud voice, a clear voice, but also it speaks to the issues that affect us. To make sure that ACFTA has a meaning. If, for example, we had signed AGOA as AU and the US, there was no way Rwanda would have been penalized for refusing to bring in dead people's clothes. You know? So the essence of of numbers if we make the AU a fit-for-purpose organization. And that is our intention. The notes President Kagame handed over to me says we must do 3 things, and which I intend to persuade my colleagues for us to achieve. Number 1, to use AU for our economic diplomacy, to make sure that it speaks to having a unified market in our continent, making sure that the ACFTA works, we have the same regulations, the borders that exist stop being barriers, but instead being bridges into the next continent, into the next country. And I say this because in EAC, intra-trade between Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, the EAC countries, is at 28%. It is the highest in the continent. It is the single highest regional economic bloc that has trade at that level. We intend to pull the rest of the continent in that direction, and it tells you that the 16% can actually get to 50% if we do things right. So this is the trajectory we are looking at. We are also looking at making sure that the AU deals with the challenges of infrastructure. You heard the president here talk about infrastructure. We must make the AU fit for purpose, to focus on a few things, not too many things: security and stability, economic, diplomacy, infrastructure, period. And then we make sure that it serves the continent well. It will give us voice, it will give us, it will speak for reasonable numbers, and even if we have, it will help us push against unfair trade deals, because we have the numbers to say no to the EU if we are standing as Africa. But if I'm standing as Kenya or Rwanda, they can push. Yes. But if we are standing together, we can make sure that we push our agenda properly. Let me finalize by saying, to support our private sector, even our private sector today, they are molested by financial institutions. They are told, you are investing in the wrong place. You cannot put a factory in Africa, it is risky. They are charged high interest rates. That is our responsibility. The AU must be able to fight for a fairer international financial architecture that de-risks investments in Africa and allows investors like Aliko and others who have the courage to invest in our continent to get resources at rates that make business sense for them to invest.
Agreed. And I have to apologize to Aliko Dangote, actually. When I saw all those cranes in that area on his refinery, I said, Alaji, that looks like a graveyard for cranes. And he said, no, Eleni, it's a parking lot. We're going to put that to work. So it's there, right? And the opportunities are there. And it's so exciting to see some of these projects. But President Kagame, you're seeing, they need, like the likes of Aliko Dangote, they have to make sure they have a power plant when they, build a factory. There's so many things that need to happen. And again, I come down to policy that we need to really make this continent shine. And I feel there's a shift. When I interview people across the continent, I feel there's a shift that we want to take control of our future. And I want to end off with you just telling us what that is going to look like, because I feel when I come to Rwanda that this is a fantastic example of how that can happen.
Yeah, I think we have to be practical, we have to be realistic as well. And we have to do with the resources we have before us, because there are enough resources. All that remain for us to make the right decisions. And that will also be reached by having this interaction. Government and business should have a level of understanding so that we benefit each other. In fact, for example, government should be able to put business-friendly policies in place. Even where there are regulations to be put in place, they have to be addressing certain business constraints so that things don't get out of hand. That is very important. And the business should also do what they know best, and that is doing business. And also benefiting the people of any country where they are taking root. So it's doable. You know, you asked, leadership, as you said, or doing the right thing requires the mind to be right as well. For example, when you said, you were talking rightly about the borders and how people, you know, cross borders to do business from one country to another in FCFTA. And you said, do we like each other enough? We don't even have to like each other to that level. I mean, I explained it like this. And President Ruto mentioned it. For these people who go out looking for markets, are you really looking for markets from countries that you like, or that like you for that matter? No, it's just being wrong-headed. But we need to minimize the levels of any misunderstandings or conflicts, because some of them are based on trivial things and things that can actually be addressed and corrected and should not stand in the way of business or relations of people to do business together, for people to move freely and so on and so forth. You can't create an FCFTA and then at the same time you constrain movement of people. So how is it going to be solved? FCFTA means you must allow that freedom of movement of people, of goods, services, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, you do one thing. So we still have that problem which we must address, and we must only blame ourselves for having this kind of situation prevail in our midst. You can't blame anybody else. We can't blame outsiders. We can't blame, no. We should blame ourselves, but we should correct it, and we should just put things right the way we know how.
Big round of applause to all of you. Thank you so very much, President Kagame, President Ruto, President Nyusi. Great to have you with me. Thank you for this very honest, very dynamic panel. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our fantastic presidents.